Welcome to Working Progress. We're really excited for you to join us on our very first video podcast. And we're hoping that you'll join us every quarter as we tackle a different topic. So let's get started with our first topic, which is all about how executives are taking care of themselves. How do you grow? How do you create that development? And we thought that the perfect first guest is Ron Price. So Ron, our CEO and president of TTI Success Insights, thank you so much for joining us today.
And Brittney, thank you so much for inviting me to be your first guest.
Yes, this is a momentous occasion. So for those folks who might not be familiar with TTI, might not be familiar with you, will you give us just a little bit of background of, who you are, who is Ron Price, and how did you get to TTI?
Yes, I've had a really unusual career in that I've been in a lot of different roles, but it always had a common theme, and that was a love for people and a desire to see people discover and then chase after their greatest potential. And in the early days, that was expressed through theater. I was in love with theater as a young person. I acted in my first play when I was 9. That eventually grew to, I knew I was never going to be a leading man. And it grew to becoming a director and a playwright. And I just had wonderful years there, but it became clear to me it was time to move on to something else. Spent a number of years as an entrepreneur in business with my father. It looked like a detour, but I look back on it, and it was just more this desire to help people with their potential. I was trained as a lay minister, and I spent 9 years in full-time church work, and then was pulled back into the world of consulting, which led to helping to grow a nutrition business in the 90s. It was a wonderful experience because nutrition products at that time were in a very, very fast growth mode. Lots of conflicts around how they were regulated that I got to be a part of, and then also international growth. And I retired from that in 2000, and my wife said, "You're not retiring." I said, "Well, that's what they told me I was doing, so I'm retiring." And after a few years, I had already been introduced to TTI Success Insights products, and I thought, I want to go find out more about that company because it's really interesting. I have to confess, Brittney, that prior to 1997, I thought that assessments that people take around personality or behavioral style were just parlor games.
That's okay. There's a lot of people that think that.
Yeah, my exposure to them had just been, I don't really think they're anything other than a feel-good time for a day. But I went to Coach University in 1997 as part of my professional development, and as a part of that, I was introduced to TTI Success Insights. They captured my interest. I started working with the behavioral style assessment, which a lot of people refer to as DISC, and their motivators assessment. And in 2004, when I decided I was going to build a new business, I came to a TTI Success Insights conference in Scottsdale to meet the people and find out if they were people I would enjoy working with. And that's really what got me started on this path. I was a value-added associate, somebody who uses these for coaching and consulting and training for 18 years. And in 2009, I had the opportunity to open up an office in Shanghai and to help develop the network of TTI partners throughout Greater China. Never lived there, but commuted a lot. I think I made 30 trips in 3 years or something like that. Yeah, it was. And then in 2020, I was starting to think about slowing down. And in 2021, Dave Bonstetter reached out to me and asked if I would consider becoming a part of the team in Scottsdale. And we spent 4, 5, 6 months thinking and talking about it. And then as a result of his invitation, joined the team in late October of 2021. And it's been a wonderful, it's amazing. I've done all these different things, and each one seems to keep getting better than the rest. I think this is my last chapter career-wise. So I've got a great sense of wanting to be my best and make the biggest difference for other people.
Well, that's exciting that you're here to do that with us. I'm a little biased, so I'm excited about that. But it sounds like your journey, you've always been in some sort of leadership role. Mm-hmm. Is that fair to say? Or did you just find yourself in those leadership roles? Or is that something you aspire to and you know that is something that works best for you? How did you kind of always find yourself in that space? I mean, I know you said a lot of it was entrepreneurial, but
yeah, and I probably don't know all the reasons why, but I can recognize that it was a natural thing. Not that I saw it, but that just felt comfortable for mm-hmm. me. I say it with some embarrassment now, but I took my younger brother under my wing. He's no longer, well, he's still my younger brother. He's not my little brother anymore. He's bigger than me. But I felt a certain love for him, and I wanted to help him with his potential, mm-hmm. even when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. And then that just parlayed itself into each of these roles. And again, I was never that much interested in the position as I was interested in the opportunity to help other people. And I think that's how it unfolded.
Sure. So when I think about folks who have a similar background to you, often you're pouring yourself into others. You know, it's like all of the, the mechanic whose car doesn't work, or, you know, you often neglect the things for yourself that you're helping others with. Yeah. So along that journey, how have you made time and made space for yourself? Do you seek outside folks to do the same thing for you, or do you have other systems that work for you?
I've had a lot of really great mentors my whole life, and rarely was it a formally defined relationship. Mm-hmm. But I look back and say, this one really made a big difference here, this one helped me here, and I can probably at least 15 or 20 over 50 years that I can say really had a profound impact. There was something that really changed my trajectory, I think, and it probably would have been maybe around 1979. My whole life, I've had problems with overcommitting. And I've worked on it my whole life, and I'm proud to tell you that I still have problems with overcommitting.
Well, you're in good company.
It didn't change. But I've spent a lot of time thinking about why, mm-hmm. and what is it that causes me to say yes so often. And I think that's a personal question each person has to answer. But in one of my early attempts to try to bring it under control, in about 1979, I bought an audio cassette series called Your Time in Your Life, which was about time management and goal setting. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have any time to listen to it. It sat on my shelf for 6 months, and then I got provoked, and I decided I would set aside 30 minutes a day and listen to this program and make notes and try to change how I organized my life. And that really was a pivotal point, because I've never given up that 30 minutes a day ever since. And in fact, it oftentimes grows. Right now, it goes up and down depending on my life situation, but right now it's 2 hours a day, where I say if I don't focus on me first, I'm not going to be the best version to help others. Mm-hmm. So I've got to start there. And I think to fulfill your potential, everybody's got to figure that out some way. And it's not going to be the way that I did it. It may not be the time of day, but everybody's got to figure out how to put yourself first so that you can be of greater value when you go serve others.
That's interesting. And as I'm thinking about day to day, I know a little bit about what your day looks like, and I know what my day looks like, and it's the same thing for most folks who are in any type of role. How do you find that time, and how do you get comfortable really blocking, if you will, that space and that time to have 2 hours a day? That just seems kind of crazy, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and how I get it has changed based on context, based on different responsibilities that I have. And I'm in a unique place right now because our kids are all grown up and we have grandkids, and it's just my wife and I, and so I have a lot of control over my schedule at home. And when you get older, for a lot of us, you tend to start waking up earlier. So actually, I don't expect anybody else to do it, but for me, from 4 to 6 every morning is the most powerful time for me, because it sets the course for my whole day. And I've got a routine that I use every day. And I will then periodically evaluate it and say, is this working for me or not? But that's my core strength, just like a physical workout to work on your core. That's my core mentally and emotionally and spiritually.
And so are there certain things that you focus on in that time frame? Are you utilizing any sort of methodology or framework that guides you through that? Or is it kind of just dependent on what's going on in your life and in work?
Yeah, I have a plan, but it can get disrupted. Sometimes it gets disrupted because I overcommitted.
Full circle.
But for me, and again, this is going to be unique for each individual, but for me, it starts with a spiritual foundation. So a spiritual foundation is a sense of purpose and its values. And it's who do you want to be as a human being, not because of your position or not because of your roles, but starting at more of a deeper core. So that morning time starts there, and then it moves into organizing. So I'm still a fanatic about lists. I used to have lists on napkins from the restaurant and on the back of envelopes, and they're all in my iPhone. And this morning I have 3,200 tasks or ideas in my iPhone. So they fall into three categories. They're tasks, ideas, or commitments that I keep track of. And the reality is with 3,200, a lot of them are ideas or reminders that I want to live my life on purpose. So I send myself reminders about that. But that organizing becomes really important to me, getting the most out of each day. It's looking at that and looking at my schedule and making sure that I'm aligned for what each day holds. It's not something that came natural for me, but I've really worked hard at thinking one day at a time. I do have long-term plans. And it's easy, it comes natural for me to think about the future, but to live in the moment is something that I have to work on constantly. And to not let my mind go to other things while we're sitting here talking, but to be totally focused on our conversation. And it's been a great discipline, but it's also brought me great joy because I get a lot of fulfillment and a lot of pleasure out of each day, a day at a time. And then I think of the week and the month and the year as being sort of my season record, if I compare it to competition. And you can't win the week today. You can only win today. And for me, the way to win it is to be fully present around my purpose, which is to help other people discover and pursue their greatest potential.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting that you talk about finding that time for yourself and really focusing. What I'm hearing is from a spiritual spot first, right? Get right within and then move along from there.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that's been the key to your success and to your growth as a leader? Because oftentimes it can be lonely, in that role as a president or as a C-level executive, there aren't a lot of other folks that you can have those conversations and bounce ideas off of. So is that it, or is there something else?
Well, there are external things that you have to respond to appropriately as well, but that's the most important thing, because one of the things I remind myself during that time of getting myself centered is that I really am not the center of the universe, and I'm not responsible for the operation of I'm only responsible to be present and to do the best that I can in the moment. So I most of the time don't let important decisions weigh too heavily on me. I recognize that I will never have all the information that I need to make a decision, and that it's guaranteed that I won't make all the right decisions. So don't quit trying. Just do the best you can with what you have, and be willing to recognize when you did make a wrong decision. And at the core of my idea about leadership is that humility. I actually think courage and humility are the two things that you have to be a good leader. And courage is the willingness to take a risk, to take a stand for something that you believe in terms of vision or even ethics. Humility is always being a learner, not a teacher. And if you can nurture that attitude and it becomes a part of you, you never feel alone. There's always somebody teaching you something, and it doesn't matter what their title is. It can be one of your grandkids is teaching you something. And so I don't feel alone at all because of that. I don't feel that kind of pressure, but I think it's because I recognize I'm not the position. That's just part of the way I live life. And there are a lot of people who help with that, especially in today's world. Our company is not a leader. Our company is really everyone's a leader of one kind or another. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, what makes it. I never feel like I'm carrying the whole load. I'm just one of many people.
That's incredible and very insightful. I think oftentimes when you get to a certain point in your professional career, or even probably your personal career, you feel like there's the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I love that idea of, no, I'm just a learner, and where do you turn to learn,
Yeah.
As you're saying, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And of course, I have disciplines of reading and being in the right groups of people and all of those things. But one of the things that I think has helped me a lot and given me a tremendous sense of security in what I do is the TTI Success Insights reports. There is so much to explore that has helped me with self-awareness and helped me to grow my self-regulation, to be disciplined, to help me to understand and nurture motivation. There's so much inside of the TTI Success Insights reports that I still rely on. I started taking these regularly back in 2004, and I still retake all of the TTI Success Insights reports every year, both because I like to track what's happened from year to year, because they're capturing my self-concept and how my self-concept has changed over the years. But secondly, they always give me something new to work on. They always give me some new way to think about growing. Mm-hmm. So that's really been a key ingredient for me. So this is all internal. What I've learned looking back is that there's also what's happening externally and whether you're prepared for it when it comes. There is this statement that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Mm-hmm. And if you're working on yourself and being the best version of yourself, when the opportunities come, they look right to you. They look natural, and oftentimes they look natural to the other people. So because I'm getting older, and you tend to reminisce when you get old, I've thought about 7 distinct chapters in my journey that I've both lived over and over and over again at a micro level, but that I can also see in my life at a macro level that are pretty predictable. And when I recognize where I'm at, it gives me insight as to how I can be the best version of myself in that chapter and how I can be preparing for the next chapter. Is that a setup or what?
I was going to say, thank you very much. All right. So do we have time? Let's dive in. What are those 7 things, and where did this come from? So is this something that you created, or is this a framework that you've pulled from? I know you're an avid reader. Yep. So I'm going to guess it came from...
Yeah, I'm going to confess that I don't have no original ideas. But what I have looked back on is realized that oftentimes we are sort of like a chef. We take an idea from here, an idea from here, an idea from here, and we create a new recipe. And I think that's how this came, was that it was all of a sudden the coalescence of lots of thinking and reading and listening. So the first chapter is the invitation. It's where somebody asks you to take on a role, or maybe you volunteer to take on a role. And what I've come to learn over and over and over again is that invitation is important to be aware of and important to accept, important to embrace. But it's not because you're capable. Matter of fact, if it's a great invitation, you're never competent to fulfill it. And that's part of the journey. That takes to chapter 2. In chapter 2, you move into awareness, where you get to know yourself in a different and a better way because of this invitation that you accepted. You begin to think about, can I or not? And you have days of great hope and days of discouragement. And as you become more and more aware of your relationship to that invitation, you move into chapter 3, which is the chapter of development. You start growing, often unperceptibly, sometimes intentionally, but you begin to grow into the invitation that you were given, the responsibility. And eventually, if you keep at that, you move into chapter 4, which is the chapter of endorsement or validation. It's where somebody else recognizes that you're doing it. And there's something very different when somebody else says you did it than when you say you did it.
Right.
It's a whole different level of affirmation and encouragement where you say, wow, yeah, that actually did happen. Mm-hmm. And that eventually leads you into chapter 5, which is the chapter of impact, where at some point what you've done and what you've invested in has created enough of a base that the impact is bigger than you. To me, the great example of this is I've been privileged to be able to write several books. And you get that book written and you don't know where it's going to go. I remember getting an email from somebody in South Africa a few years ago saying, I read this book and it changed my life. Well, that's impact. And it's impact that's bigger than you. It's impact because you've been at it. All of a sudden, it's sort of like your energy or your aura goes out there and you really just can only be grateful for it because you don't deserve it. It goes beyond anything that you've earned. And if you're sensitive and you care about the whole journey, you begin to recognize that now it's time for chapter 6. And chapter 6 is the chapter of mentoring. It's where you realize, I'm not going to be here forever, and I've had my fun. It's time to help other people. It's time to create space and to tell them that you believe in them, to tell them about what you think is possible. And if you do that successfully, I think you can get to chapter 7, which unfortunately I think a lot of leaders never get to. Chapter 7 is the chapter of celebration and reflection. It's where you can say, my race is done, not as a human being, but for my work, for my career, my race is done. And I can rest. I can take time to reflect. Maybe you write memoirs to your kids or your family, but I can take time to say, for me, this is finished. And it's a wonderful place to get to. I've actually had the opportunity in previous careers to get there and to take time to go through that process. And it's part of what taught me the value of it. And unfortunately, some of my mentors never got there. I don't know why, but they could never say it's finished and celebrate it. And I think we're missing something if we can never get to that period of reflection and celebration. So those are the 7 chapters.
Those are pretty incredible. And it sounds like those 7 chapters or 7 stages are repeatable, right? So,
I think I've seen them happen over and over again in my life, but then I see them at a macro level where, based on the way that you age and things like that, you realize. And one of the things that model has helped me with is to make sure that I don't get addicted or stuck in any chapter and miss the transition to the next chapter. Because if you do, the journey doesn't end. You get stuck midway in the journey. So for me right now, I'm in this chapter of mentoring where I really don't want to be the focus point. I want to help other people. And I want to be some kind of an encouragement to them that gives them the courage to go further than they might have otherwise. And then the day will come when I'll say, great, that time's done. It'll probably be when I can't talk very well anymore. Some days my wife says she doesn't think I know what I'm saying, so it may be getting close already. I don't know. But it's a wonderful thing to understand that pattern and to flow with it and to not fight against it, but to let it be a part of your experience in life.
Well, it's interesting as I'm thinking about the 7 different stages and, stage 3, okay, development. My brain immediately goes, that's what we're focused on, right? That's where you need to focus. But as you said, you can get stuck. And I think that what I just heard you say is once you get up to that mentorship, stage, there's a certain sense of that gives back to you as well. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like for folks who maybe haven't entered into a mentorship before, or maybe they've been the one being mentored, because we often hear that's really important for your career and your growth. But I think there's an opportunity to learn and develop yourself and different skills inside of that. Have you found that to be true, or are there aspects of mentorship that keep you on your toes and keep
absolutely.
going?
for a couple of reasons. One is the greatest mentoring that we do is invisible. We don't even realize we're doing it. When you get down to who you are as a person and what values you use to govern yourself or what values you use to relate to other people, most of our influence is invisible to us. I can say that about my mentors. Oftentimes they didn't know what they were doing for me, but it had a profound impact. Sometimes many of them are gone now. I wish I had had the opportunity to tell them. I think another part of it is mentorship is not, it's not teaching other people to be like you. It's having a deep appreciation for the unique experience and journey of each person and seeing how you can be a positive influence in their journey. So it's not, I'm going to mentor people who believe the same way as I do. It's not, I'm going to mentor people to do their time management the way that I do. Did I tell you I'm still having trouble with overcommitment?
What?
It's that I'm going to use what I've learned about the uniqueness of human beings and the models that I've learned, especially through TTI Success Insights, to help people discover who they are and to value that, to honor that, and then to help them with how they define their sense of purpose and how they define their values. And that is a different kind of mentoring, I think. I think a lot of my mentors, not intentionally, it's just what they had available to them at the time. It was, this is the way I live my life. You should live that way. By the way, most of my mentors were informal because I'm independent and I don't like being told what to do. So I got most of my lessons indirectly by watching them and by stories that they would share with me. And I was not very open to people saying, you should do it this way. Sure. So I think it makes me sensitive to not being that kind of a mentor toward others as well.
I think that's important too, right? That you're open and it helps others be open to just having a conversation. You never know what you're going to get out of it.
Right. And again, if you live in the moment,
right, it's
there's a new adventure every day. That's great fun. So that, and then I think the other test when you're in this mentoring phase is it will test whether you still have pride or whether you're still trying to somehow prove yourself. Because a lot of mentoring effectively is about letting go, releasing, endorsing, and saying, I need to keep getting smaller, and you need to keep getting larger. And when you're comfortable with yourself as a human being, that's a beautiful place to be. I feel bad for people who are still tortured trying to prove themselves, or that somehow they've got to be the center of attention, because I know they're missing the richer, the more enjoyable part of life.
So you're at this point of mentorship, and we're looking down the face of celebration. What are some ways that you like to celebrate? I think that's so important, and it's not easy. I know it's not easy for me either, to stop and go, oh my goodness, look at what we just did, and let's celebrate it. So what are some ways that you would suggest someone celebrates?
I think you got to figure out what works for you. I'm not a partying type, so for me, celebration would be a week on the beach.
That sounds lovely.
My wife and I love to take walks, and we have wonderful vacations when we have very little on the schedule. We both love reading a lot. I love journaling, but not out of obligation when I'm prompted to do it.
Yeah.
So all that is actually, it might not sound like celebration, but that's all celebration for me. Peace and quiet, and being able to enjoy life in not a frantic way, but in a peaceful way. That's really refreshing and renewing for me. And when I left my last executive position, I took a full year off.
Really?
I part of my contract was I couldn't work for anybody else for a year. So that was a wonderful experience of celebrating for a whole year. I celebrated every Monday morning on the golf course and learned that I was never going to be a professional golfer. And I celebrated by backpacking in Southwest China with my oldest son for 2 weeks in just an amazing lifetime experience. I celebrated by working on our lawn and our garden. It was things that other people might think, well, those are simple. But for me, they were celebration because they're not a normal part of my life.
Sure. Well, and that's so important to realize that it's going to look different for everybody. And I bet it looked different in the different stages of life that you've gone through as well, right?
Yep.
That's going to look different if you have children versus,
Yep.
If everybody's grown and gone.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people tell me they disagree with that stage 7 of celebration. They said, no, you should never retire. You should just refire. And I'm saying, okay, well, you can, if that's what you want to do, you can do it. But to me, it's not doing nothing. It's doing things that you've had a desire to do, but they just never fit into your life before.
Sure.
And so when I do move fully into that chapter 7, I'm going to experiment. I'm going to try things I've thought about, and I might try them and say, well, that doesn't work. But I'm going to intentionally try things that I've never done before.
I think that's a great idea. And I think, just knowing you a little bit, I think you may even find that you have many 7 stages inside of that 7th stage of celebration.
Could be.
So if you had to wrap it all up and really look back at this career and this lifetime of leadership and of, continuing through these 7 stages, what would you tell a younger Ron? What's your word? What are your parting words of wisdom?
So a younger Ron, I think I would say, keep working on character. Character is everything. You build it over a lifetime, you can screw it up in a minute. So keep working on character. Develop expertise around one or more things that you really enjoy. Not that you feel obligated to, not that's going to give you the most money, but that you really, really enjoy. And recognize that positions should come to you more than you chasing after them. Now, invitation, sometimes you do volunteer, but recognize the position's never what it's cracked up to be. It's something that is loaned to you for a period of time. And if you've been developing your character and your expertise, then you'll enjoy the position. If you've been waiting for the position, you're in trouble. So I would say, take it easy. Work on those first 2, character and expertise, and let the rest flow. Luck, when preparation meets opportunity. Yeah,
there's something serendipitous about that, isn't there? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us. And that gave me a lot to think about. So.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you. This is, to be able to share some of this is what I really appreciate. And I'm very grateful for the chance to share some of what I've experienced and hope that it will help others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on our very first podcast. I'm sure you got some nuggets out of that. And we look forward to having you join us next quarter. We're going to be talking about retention. So tune in again. We'll see you next time.